Helen Crawford stood in the center of the massive council chamber. Above her, the dome displayed countless stars, each one representing a world in the galactic community. Around her sat representatives from 47 different alien species. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few looked like walking crystals. All of them were staring at her with expressions that ranged from curiosity to open contempt. She cleared her throat and began speaking. Her voice echoed through the chamber, translated instantly into dozens of languages by the station's computers. The Terran Alliance has called this emergency session to make an announcement, Helen said. Effective immediately, we are establishing an exclusion zone around all human-controlled space. This zone extends 20 light-years beyond our current borders. No vessel from any species may enter this zone without explicit permission from Earth's government. The chamber erupted in noise. Aliens shouted, clicked, whistled, and roared their objections. Helen stood quietly, waiting for them to calm down. Beside her, Commander Jake Morrison kept his hand near his sidearm, though he knew it would be useless if things turned violent. On her other side, Dr. Lisa Bennett clutched her datapad, her fingers trembling slightly. The loudest voice belonged to Vexthor, the representative from the Kralix Confederacy. He was 7 feet tall with blue-black scales and eyes that glowed yellow in the dim light. "This is absurd," he bellowed. "Humanity controls barely 50 star systems. The Kralix Confederacy alone governs 3,000 systems. You have no right to block galactic trade routes." Helen waited for silence before responding. "We have every right to defend our borders. 70 years ago, a Kralix merchant vessel entered human space. That ship carried a pathogen. Whether by accident or design, that disease spread to the colony world of New Haven. 2 billion humans died. 2 billion? Vexthor waved a clawed hand dismissively. That incident was investigated. It was declared an unfortunate accident. The Kralix government paid reparations. You paid money, Helen said, her voice cold. Money doesn't bring back the dead. Money doesn't rebuild trust. Your ships will not enter our space again. No one's ships will. A smaller alien, one of the Zephany collective, stood up. Her name was Syrah, and she spoke in a musical voice. Ambassador Crawford, please understand our position. The trade routes that pass through your space have existed for centuries. Redirecting them will add months to travel time. It will cost trillions of credits. Entire economies depend on these routes. That is not our problem, Helen replied. We are not asking for negotiation. We are informing you of our decision. The borders are marked. Cross them at your own risk. Jake Morrison stepped forward and activated a holographic display. It showed a 3-dimensional map of human space surrounded by a glowing red line. We have already placed automated warning beacons at every entry point, he said. Any ship that crosses this line will receive 3 warnings. After the 3rd warning, we will consider it an act of war. The chamber filled with angry voices again. A representative from the Mordelian Empire, a species that looked like armored insects, clicked out a message that the translators rendered as, "You cannot enforce this. You are too weak. Your fleet is tiny compared to ours." Helen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Test us and find out. Dr. Lisa Bennett activated another display. This one showed images from the New Haven disaster. Bodies stacked in streets, mass graves, children dying in overwhelmed hospitals. This is why we built the exclusion zone, she said quietly. This is what happens when we trust others to respect our space. Never again. Vexthor stood again, his scales bristling with anger. The Kralix Confederacy does not recognize this illegal blockade. Our merchants will continue to use established trade routes. If you attack them, we will consider it an act of war against our people. Then there will be war, Helen said simply. The chamber fell silent. No one had expected such a direct statement. The humans were supposed to be reasonable, diplomatic, eager to fit into galactic society. This was something new and frightening. Syrah tried one more time. Please, Ambassador, there must be a compromise. What if we agree to inspections? What if our ships submit to health scans before entering your space? Helen shook her head. The decision is final. We spent 70 years trying to work within your system. We filed complaints. We requested regulations. We begged for safety protocols. Nothing changed. So now we protect ourselves. Jake Morrison added, Every human colony remembers New Haven. Every parent tells their children about the plague. We will not risk it happening again. A elderly alien, one of the few species that had always been friendly to humans, raised a tentacle. His name was Orlok, and he spoke with sadness in his voice. What about scientific expeditions? Cultural exchanges? Will you close your doors to all contact? Helen's expression softened slightly. Ships with prior authorization may request passage. We are not cutting ourselves off completely, but the days of unrestricted access are over. The days of assuming we will accept whatever risk others bring are over. Vexthor's laugh boomed through the chamber. You are making enemies of the entire galaxy. When you need help, when you face a crisis, who will come to your aid? You are isolating yourselves. Better isolated than dead, Helen replied. Better alone than trusting those who have proven themselves untrustworthy. She turned to address the entire assembly. In 3 standard days, the exclusion zone becomes active. All ships currently in human space have that long to leave. After that, anyone who enters without permission will face the consequences. We have marked our borders clearly. We have stated our terms plainly. What happens next is your choice. Jake Morrison pulled up footage from the boundary. Dozens of space stations floated in the void, bristling with weapons. Automated defense platforms hung like deadly flowers around every entry point. Minefields stretched across light years. We have spent decades preparing for this, he said. Our entire economy has been focused on one goal, making our borders impenetrable. Whatever you think you know about human military capability is wrong. The council erupted again. Accusations flew. Threats were made. The Kralix promised retaliation. The Zephany warned of economic sanctions. The Mordelians talked about forming a coalition to force human compliance. Helen Crawford listened to it all with a calm expression. She had expected this reaction. The alien powers saw humanity as a minor species, barely worth noticing. They thought humans would back down when faced with their superior numbers and longer histories. They were wrong. As the session finally ended, Helen walked out of the chamber with Jake and Lisa beside her. In the corridor outside, Jake let out a long breath. That went about as well as expected. They don't believe us, Lisa said. They think we're bluffing, Helen nodded. I know, someone will test the borders. Probably the Kralix. They're too proud to back down. What if they send a fleet? Jake asked. Then they'll learn why humans are so good at building defenses, Helen said. We've spent centuries fighting each other on Earth. We know war. They've grown soft with their easy peace and established trade routes. They're about to get a very expensive education. They reached their ship. A small diplomatic vessel docked at the station's outer ring. As they boarded, Helen looked back at the council chamber. Somewhere in there, alien powers were already planning how to defy human borders, planning how to teach humanity its place. Helen allowed herself a small, grim smile. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson. When humans said they would defend their borders, they meant it absolutely. The warning had been given. The lines had been drawn. Now it was only a matter of time before someone crossed them, and then everyone would see what happened when you pushed humanity too far. Captain Ryan Hughes sat in the command chair of the Terran Defense Force ship Vigilant. The bridge was quiet except for the soft beeping of sensors and the hum of life support systems. His crew moved efficiently at their stations, well-trained and professional. They had been on patrol along the border for 2 weeks now, watching and waiting. Captain, we have multiple contacts, Lieutenant Amy Patterson called out from the tactical station. Her voice was steady, but Ryan could hear the tension underneath. 15 vessels, commercial configuration. There's Zephany merchant ships. Ryan leaned forward. Escorts? Yes, sir. 3 warships. Kralix destroyers by the signature. Ryan felt his stomach tighten. This was it. Someone was actually going to test the border. He had hoped the warning would be enough, but apparently not. Distance? 4 hours at their current speed. They're heading straight for the boundary marker at Sector 7. Send the standard warning, Ryan ordered. All frequencies, all languages. The communications officer, a young man named Chris Lopez, activated the automated system. Ryan listened as the message played out. Attention unidentified vessels. You are approaching Terran sovereign space. Entry without authorization is prohibited. Turn back now. On the main screen, the convoy continued forward without slowing. Not even a response. Send it again, Ryan said. And get me a direct channel to the lead ship. Chris worked his controls. Channel open, sir. Ryan spoke clearly. This is Captain Ryan Hughes of the Terran Defense Force. You are about to enter restricted space. You have been warned. Turn back immediately. For a moment there was only static. Then a translated voice came through, musical and unconcerned. This is Captain Mira of the merchant vessel Swift Prophet. We are conducting lawful commerce on established trade routes. We do not recognize your illegal blockade. The blockade is not illegal, Ryan replied. It is enforced by the Terran Alliance. You have 2 more warnings before we take action. Your threats are meaningless, Mira responded. We have Kralix military protection. Stand aside. The channel closed. Ryan looked at Amy. How long until they reach the boundary? 3 hours and 40 minutes. Chief Engineer Paul Grant spoke up from his station. Captain, should I bring weapons online? Ryan shook his head. We won't need them. The grid will handle this. Paul nodded, but he looked nervous. Everyone on the bridge knew what was about to happen. They had trained for it, prepared for it, but this would be the first real test. The first time human defenses would actually fire on alien ships. The hours crept by. Ryan sent 2 more warnings. Both were ignored. The convoy approached the glowing marker buoys that indicated the boundary of human space. Behind them, the 3 Kralix destroyers powered up their weapon systems, clearly expecting resistance from the small patrol ship. 1 minute to boundary, Amy announced. Ryan activated the ship-wide comm. All hands, this is the captain. The convoy is about to cross. Everyone stay at your stations and do your jobs. This is what we trained for. He watched the display as the lead merchant ship crossed the line. The moment it did, a final warning buoy activated. It broadcast one last message, bright and clear. You have entered Terran space without authorization. Defensive measures are now active. The Kralix destroyer captain, a warrior named Krelzak, laughed as he heard the warning. He had fought in 3 wars and commanded warships for 20 years. These humans with their empty threats meant nothing to him. He ordered his gunners to destroy the warning buoy. Energy beams lashed out, vaporizing the small beacon. Krelzak smiled. Onwards! Let us see what these humans dare to do. What happened next took exactly 14 minutes. The space around the convoy suddenly lit up with weapons fire. Platforms that had been hidden, powered down and invisible to sensors came online all at once. They had been there for years, waiting. Hundreds of them scattered across millions of cubic kilometers. The first volley hit the merchant ships. These vessels had light shields, barely enough to protect against micrometeors. The railgun rounds punched through them like they weren't there. Metal projectiles moving at incredible speed tore through hulls, through cargo bays, through engine rooms. They're firing back, Amy reported, her voice tight. The destroyers are engaging the platforms. On the screen, the Kralix warships launched their own weapons. Energy beams and missiles streaked toward the defense platforms. Shields flared as they absorbed the hits, but for every platform the aliens destroyed, 3 more activated. The defensive grid was redundant, overlapping, impossible to suppress. Krelzak realized too late that he had made a terrible mistake. His shields were designed to stop energy weapons, the standard armament of every species in the galaxy. But the humans used kinetic weapons, solid projectiles accelerated to enormous speeds. His shields barely slowed them down. Evasive maneuvers, he roared at his pilot. The destroyer banked hard, trying to avoid the incoming fire. Proximity mines, previously dormant, detected the movement and detonated. Shrapnel ripped across the ship's hull. The merchant vessels died first. They had no real defenses, no military-grade armor. One by one, they were torn apart by the relentless fire. Atmosphere vented into space. Debris scattered across the void. Emergency beacons activated automatically, crying out for help that wouldn't come. 2 of the Kralix destroyers fought back desperately. They managed to destroy a dozen defense platforms, but it wasn't enough. For every one they killed, 5 more targeted them. The concentrated fire was overwhelming. On the Vigilant, Ryan watched in silence. His crew did the same. There was no joy in this, no celebration, just a grim confirmation that the defenses worked exactly as designed. One of the destroyers is trying to retreat, Amy said quietly. Ryan nodded. Let it go. Someone needs to carry the message back. The surviving destroyer, its hull scarred and smoking, turned and fled. Behind it, the rest of the convoy floated as wreckage. 17 ships had crossed the boundary. 16 were now debris. Thousands of aliens were dead. Send out the recovery drones, Ryan ordered. Check for survivors. Paul looked up in surprise. Sir? We're not monsters, Ryan said firmly. If anyone survived, we'll pull them out and give them medical care. Then we'll send them home. The drones launched, moving through the debris field. They found 43 survivors, mostly from the merchant ships. The destroyer crews had fought to the end and died at their stations. As the survivors were brought aboard, Ryan recorded a message. He knew it would be broadcast across the galaxy within hours. This is Captain Ryan Hughes of the Terran Defense Force. At 1400 hours station time, a convoy of alien vessels crossed into Terran space without authorization. They were given multiple warnings and chose to ignore them. The automated defense grid engaged and destroyed the intruders. He paused, choosing his words carefully. We take no pleasure in this. We gave fair warning. We marked our borders clearly. But when those borders are crossed, we will defend them absolutely. To any other ships considering a similar action, you have seen the result. Turn back, respect our sovereignty, or share the fate of this convoy. Chris looked up from his station. Sir, we're receiving thousands of transmissions. News networks, military channels, government frequencies. Everyone wants to know what happened. Send them the full sensor data, Ryan said. Let them see exactly what happened. Let them see that we meant every word of our warning. Amy pulled up a tactical display. Captain, I'm detecting 6 more convoys forming up near the border. Different sectors. They're planning coordinated crossings. Ryan felt tired suddenly. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. Alert Fleet Command. Tell them we'll need reinforcements at all border sectors. He looked at the wreckage on his screen, at the floating debris that had once been ships full of living beings. This was the price of defending the border. This was what it cost to make the galaxy take humanity seriously. They were warned, Paul said quietly, reading Ryan's expression. Yes, Ryan agreed. They were warned, and now everyone knows we weren't bluffing. The Vigilant continued its patrol, watching the border. Behind it, recovery teams worked to save the few survivors. And across the galaxy, alien governments watched the footage with growing horror. The humans had actually done it. They had fired on ships, destroyed them without hesitation. The age of testing human resolve was over. The age of consequences had begun. War leader Thexmore stood before the assembled fleet commanders in the Kralix war room. His scales were dark with rage and his yellow eyes burned with the need for revenge. Around him, holographic displays showed 500 warships gathered at staging points across Kralix space. The humans have humiliated us, Thexmore growled. They destroyed our ships. They made us look weak before the entire galaxy. This cannot stand. The other commanders clicked their agreement. General Vorn of the Mordelian Empire added his forces to the display. 200 of my ships join your cause. The humans must learn their place. We have the numbers, Thexmore continued. 500 warships against their tiny defense force. We will not play their game. We will not attack their border stations. Instead, we jump directly to their colony worlds. We strike at their homes, their families. We show them what real war means. On Earth, Fleet Admiral Linda Shaw watched the same intelligence reports that showed the alien fleet gathering. She was 60 years old, with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many battles. She sat in the orbital command center above Earth, surrounded by tactical displays and communications equipment. They're planning something different this time, said Colonel Danny West, commander of the fighter wings. He was younger, barely 40, with the quick reflexes of a pilot and the strategic mind of a chess master. They're not approaching the border. Dr. Peter Kane, the weapons development chief, adjusted his glasses nervously. Our border defenses won't help if they jump past them. They must have calculated jump coordinates for our colony worlds. Linda nodded slowly. They're not stupid. They learned from the first incursion. They know they can't fight through our fixed defenses, so they're trying to bypass them. Can they do it? Asked General Karen Price, commander of ground forces. She had been preparing every colony for possible invasion, but defending against 500 warships was another matter entirely. They can make the jump, Linda confirmed. It requires enormous computational power and perfect coordination. But with 500 ships working together, yes. They can do it, Danny leaned forward. So what's our counter? Linda smiled, and there was something predatory in the expression. We let them come. The room fell silent. Peter looked confused. Admiral, I don't understand. They think they're being clever, Linda explained. They think they've found our weakness. But they're using navigation data we provided. Star charts we shared during peaceful trade negotiations. Maps we gave them. Understanding dawned on Danny's face. The quantum viruses. Exactly, Linda confirmed. Every piece of navigation data we ever shared has a hidden payload. The virus is dormant until triggered by one specific condition: unauthorized entry into a human star system. The moment their ships arrive at our colonies without permission, every computer on every ship will be compromised. Peter's nervousness faded, replaced by professional pride. The virus doesn't just disable systems. It makes them think they're working normally while feeding false information. Their weapons won't lock on. Their shields will drop without them knowing. Their sensors will show empty space where our ships actually are. Karen still looked worried. What if the virus doesn't work? What if they've found a way around it? Then we fight them the old-fashioned way, Linda said grimly. But I'm betting they never even checked. They're too arrogant. They think human technology is inferior. 3 days later, the alien fleet prepared for its coordinated jump. War leader Thexmore stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Vengeance of Kralis. Around him, his officers worked efficiently, preparing for the complex maneuver. All ships report ready, his second-in-command announced. Target coordinates confirmed, another officer added. Carson's World, Bridger Station, and New Terra. We will arrive simultaneously at all 3 colonies. Thexmore felt satisfaction building in his chest. The humans would be crushed. Their colonies would burn, and the galaxy would remember that the Kralix Confederacy was not to be trifled with. Execute jump, he commanded. Space twisted. 500 warships vanished from their staging areas and reappeared seconds later in orbit around 3 human colonies. Thexmore expected to see civilian habitats, unprepared defenses, chaos, and panic. Instead, his tactical display showed nothing but static. Report, he snapped. Sensors are malfunctioning. War leader, the tactical officer said, confusion in his voice. I'm showing conflicting readings. Fix it, Thexmore ordered. Weapons, prepare to fire on surface targets. The weapons officer worked his controls. Targeting systems are not responding. Wait, they're responding but won't lock. The computers say there are no valid targets. Across the fleet, similar problems were emerging. Ships reported sensor failures, weapons malfunctions, shield fluctuations, but their diagnostic systems showed everything working normally. It made no sense. On Earth, Linda Shaw watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The alien ships had appeared exactly where predicted. And the moment they did, the quantum viruses had activated. All ships report enemy vessels are blind and defenseless, Danny said, barely containing his excitement. First Strike Wing is launching now. Execute the plan, Linda ordered. Colonel Danny West climbed into his fighter, the Hawk 7. Around him, thousands of other pilots were doing the same. The Terran Defense Force didn't have massive battleships like the aliens. Instead, they had swarms of small, fast fighters, each one packed with weapons and piloted by highly trained humans. All wings, this is West, he broadcast. Targets are disabled but may become active at any moment. Hit fast, hit hard, and don't give them time to recover. For Earth, for the colonies, for everyone who died at New Haven. For New Haven. Came back thousands of voices in unison. The fighters launched. They moved in coordinated patterns like schools of fish or flocks of birds. Each group targeted a different alien ship, overwhelming it with firepower from multiple angles. Thexmore finally understood what was happening when he saw the first missiles streaking toward his fleet. Somehow, impossibly, the humans had sabotaged their computers. Everything he saw was a lie. Everything his ship told him was false. Emergency protocols, he shouted. Shut down all automated systems. Switch to manual control, but it was too late. The fighters were among them now. Missiles impacted against hulls. Railguns fired at point-blank range. Thexmore's mighty warships, built to dominate space battles, were being torn apart by craft a fraction of their size. Return fire, he ordered desperately. Target anything that moves. His crew tried. Some weapons fired wildly into space, missing the nimble human fighters by kilometers. Others wouldn't fire at all, their targeting computers feeding them false information about friendly fire risks. On Bridger Station, Captain Ryan Hughes commanded the defense of the colony from the orbital platform. He watched as the alien fleet, which should have been destroying his home, instead died ship by ship. It's working, Lieutenant Amy Patterson said with wonder in her voice. The virus is working perfectly. Maintain fire, Ryan ordered. Don't let up. Don't give them a chance to adapt. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 90 minutes. Of the 500 warships that had jumped into human space, fewer than 50 escaped. They fled in random directions, jumping blind to any coordinates that might take them away from this nightmare. Thexmore was among those who escaped. His ship was damaged, half his crew was dead, and his pride was shattered. As the vengeance of Kralis limped away from human space, he stared at the tactical display showing the wreckage of his fleet. "How?" he whispered. "How did they do this?" No one had an answer. On Earth, Linda Shaw addressed her command staff. "Send a message to every alien government. Include full sensor logs of the battle. Make sure they understand what happened." "What should the message say?" asked Karen. Linda thought for a moment.
"Tell them this. The Terran Alliance does not seek war, but we will not hesitate to defend ourselves."
"We gave warning. We marked our borders. Those who chose to ignore our sovereignty have paid the price. We hope others will learn from their mistake." Danny added, "Should we mention the quantum viruses? Let them know their navigation data is compromised?" Linda shook her head. "No, let them wonder. Let them doubt every piece of technology they've ever gotten from us. Let them be afraid." Peter Kane spoke up quietly. "Admiral, we've won a great victory, but we've also made permanent enemies. The Kraliks will never forgive this humiliation." "I know," Linda said, "but better to be feared and alive than friendly and dead. The galaxy wanted to test us. Now they know the result." She looked at the display showing Earth peaceful and blue below them. Human civilization had survived. The colonies were safe. The borders held. But she wondered late at night when she couldn't sleep whether they had won a war only to lose something more important. Still, as she watched ships full of captured alien soldiers being escorted to prison facilities, she knew the choice had been necessary. Humanity would stand alone if needed. They would defend their borders against any threat. And now, finally, the galaxy was beginning to understand that when humans said something, they meant it absolutely. 6 months after the failed invasion, the Galactic Council met again, but this time the chamber felt different. The alien representatives didn't look at the human delegation with contempt anymore. Now there was fear in their eyes. And something worse: economic desperation. Ambassador Helen Crawford sat calmly as she watched the various species argue among themselves. Beside her, Senator Greg Palmer fidgeted with his tablet. He was a politician from Earth, newly arrived to join the negotiations. He believed in compromise, in finding solutions that worked for everyone. Helen knew better. She had seen too much to trust easy promises. The Zephany representative, Sierra, spoke first. Her musical voice was strained with worry. "The trade disruption is destroying our economy. 7 of our colony worlds are facing food shortages. We need access through human space. Please, there must be a way." "The exclusion zone remains in effect," Helen said flatly. "Those are our terms." A Mordelian diplomat, his insect-like features twitching with agitation, added, 16 species have filed for economic assistance. Small civilizations that depend on the trade routes through your space are collapsing. Children are going hungry because of your stubbornness." Senator Palmer leaned toward Helen. "Maybe we could make an exception for humanitarian shipments," he whispered. Helen shook her head slightly. "If we show weakness now, they'll exploit it. Trust me." What Helen and Palmer didn't know was that in the shadows of the council chambers, a different kind of negotiation was happening. The Kraliks hadn't given up. They had simply changed tactics. On the colony of Bridger Station, Security Chief Brandon Cole was a paranoid man. His friends joked that he saw threats everywhere. After New Haven, after the invasions, Brandon figured paranoia was just good sense. He sat in his office reviewing the day's security footage. Ships came and went from the station constantly now. Trade was limited, but medical supplies, spare parts, and essential goods still moved through checkpoints. Each ship was inspected, each cargo scanned, each crew member verified. Brandon paused the footage. Something bothered him about one of the cargo ships that had docked 2 hours ago. The crew had proper identification. Their ship had passed every scan, but something felt wrong. He pulled up the crew manifest and started running deeper background checks. The captain's credentials showed him working for a human shipping company for 5 years. References checked out. Employment history looked normal, too normal. Brandon dug deeper. He called up the man's medical records, education history, family connections. Everything was there. Everything was consistent. But when he checked the timing, he found something odd. The captain had supposedly graduated from a university on Earth 23 years ago. But when Brandon contacted the university directly, they had no record of him. "Got you," Brandon muttered. He activated the station-wide alert. Within minutes, security teams were moving toward the cargo ship. The crew, seeing the response, tried to run. It turned into a hunt through the industrial sections of the station. 3 hours later, all 6 crew members were in custody. Dr. Lisa Bennett arrived from Earth to conduct the interrogations. She had become an expert in alien psychology over the years. Understanding how different species thought and communicated, she started with the captain, whose false identity had been peeled away to reveal a Kralix infiltrator named Zekmar. "Why are you here?" Lisa asked calmly. Zekmar said nothing. "We found the equipment in your cargo hold," Lisa continued. "Explosives, computer viruses, tools for sabotage. You were going to attack the defensive grid, weren't you?" Still silence. Lisa leaned back in her chair. "You know what I find interesting? Your operation was very sophisticated. False identities that would fool normal background checks. Technology that passed our scans. This took years of planning. Enormous resources. The Kralix government must be desperate." Something flickered in Zekmar's eyes. Lisa pressed her advantage. "How many other teams are there?" "You cannot stop all of us," Zekmar finally said. "We will find a way. The Kralix never forget an insult." Over the next 2 days, Lisa and her team broke the remaining infiltrators. The truth was worse than anyone had feared. 20 teams spread across 10 different colonies, all preparing to strike simultaneously, sabotage the defensive grids, create corridors for a massive fleet attack. The plan had been thorough, well-funded, and almost ready to execute. If Brandon Cole hadn't been paranoid, if he hadn't dug just a little deeper, it might have worked. Helen Crawford returned to the council chamber with the evidence. She had recordings of the interrogations, technical data about the sabotage equipment, and a complete breakdown of the conspiracy. When she played the recordings, the chamber fell silent. "This is what we're dealing with," Helen said coldly. "We asked for our borders to be respected. In response, we've been attacked twice and now faced an assassination and sabotage campaign. Tell me again how we should compromise." Sierra looked genuinely distressed. "Not all of us support these actions. The Zafani Collective condemns this conspiracy. But you benefit from it," Senator Palmer pointed out. He had seen enough now to understand Helen's hard line. "If the Kralix had succeeded, you would have gotten your trade routes back." "Don't pretend innocence," the Mordelian diplomat clicked angrily. "What do you want?" "You've won. You've proven you can defend your borders. You've humiliated those who challenged you. How much more do you need?" Helen stood up. "We want recognition. Formal, legal recognition of Terran sovereignty. We want every nation here to sign a treaty, acknowledging our right to control our own space. We want penalties for violations. And we want you to understand that if there's another attack, another conspiracy, another attempt to undermine our security, we will close our borders completely." "Completely?" Sierra asked, her voice small. "No trade, no communication, no contact of any kind," Helen confirmed. "We will become a closed system. You'll have decades to find new routes and rebuild your economies without us." The threat was effective because everyone knew humans meant it. They had proven repeatedly that they would follow through on their promises no matter the cost. Over the next weeks, representatives from various alien governments approached Helen privately. The first was Vormalik, a mid-level Zephany diplomat who had always seemed more thoughtful than his colleagues. "Ambassador Crawford," he said carefully, "may I speak with you informally?" They met in a private room away from the council chambers. Vormalik's crystalline features showed something that looked like embarrassment. "The Zephany Collective wishes to negotiate in good faith," he said. "We understand now that we made mistakes. We should have respected your boundaries from the beginning." Helen studied him carefully. "Why should I believe you?" "Because some of us are capable of learning," Vormalik replied. "Because some of us see that humanity offers something the galaxy needs, a willingness to enforce rules, to maintain borders, to say no when necessary. The old powers have grown corrupt, lazy. They assumed their dominance was eternal. And now?" Helen asked. "Now we understand that power shifts, that the young species might teach the old ones important lessons." Vormalik paused. "I cannot speak for my entire government, but there is a faction that wants genuine peace with humanity. We're willing to accept your terms." Over the following month, similar conversations happened with other species. Not the major powers like the Kralix or Mordelians. They were too proud, too angry. But smaller nations, practical ones who saw which way the wind was blowing. Senator Palmer worked with these moderates, crafting a treaty that would satisfy human security needs while allowing for regulated trade. Ships could cross human space, but only in designated corridors. They would submit to inspections. They would pay transit fees, and if they violated the terms, they would face immediate consequences. Helen watched Palmer work and felt something like hope stirring. Maybe eventually there could be a peace that didn't require total isolation, but that would take time. It would take the galaxy accepting that humanity was their equal, not their inferior. In her private quarters, Helen recorded a message to Fleet Admiral Linda Shaw. "The aliens are starting to bend," she said. "Not all of them, not willingly, but they're bending. We're going to get our treaty. We're going to get recognition. But Linda, watch the Kralix. They're not negotiating. They're planning something." On Earth, Linda received the message and immediately ordered increased surveillance of Kralix space. Helen was right to be worried. An enemy who stayed quiet after such a humiliating defeat wasn't accepting peace. They were preparing for the next round. The war wasn't over. It had simply entered a new phase. Humanity had won the military battles. Now came the harder fight, winning the peace and making it last. 1 year after Helen Crawford stood before the Galactic Council and announced the exclusion zone, she stood in the same chamber again. But everything had changed. The signatures on the treaty document glowed in holographic light, representing 42 alien civilizations that had formally recognized Terran sovereignty. President Laura Mitchell, leader of the Terran Alliance, stood beside Helen. She was a strong woman in her 50s who had guided humanity through its most difficult year. She smiled for the cameras as she signed the final document, but Helen could see the tension in her shoulders. Fleet Admiral Linda Shaw watched from Earth, her image projected into the chamber. She wore her full dress uniform, medals gleaming. Beside her appeared Colonel Danny West and General Karen Price, the military leadership of humanity, present to witness the peace they had fought to achieve. The ceremony was formal and grand. Speeches were made, promises were exchanged. The treaty was comprehensive, covering everything from transit corridors to inspection protocols to penalties for violations, but 5 species were notably absent from the signing. The Kralix Confederacy, the Mordelian Empire, and 3 of their close allies refused to attend. They would follow the treaty because they had no choice, but they would not pretend to be happy about it. After the ceremony, Helen found herself alone with Vormalik. The Zafani diplomat had become something like a friend over the past months. He was one of the few aliens who seemed to genuinely understand humanity's position. "You have achieved what you wanted," Vormalik said. "Your borders are recognized. Your security is guaranteed. But at what cost?" Helen looked at him tiredly. "What do you mean? Look around this chamber. How many species here actually like humanity? How many would help you if you faced a crisis they weren't obligated to assist with?" Vormalik's crystalline features showed sadness. "You have won respect through fear. But fear and friendship are not the same thing." "We tried friendship," Helen said quietly. 2 billion people on New Haven died because we were friendly, because we trusted, because we believed in galactic community. "We learned our lesson." "I know," Vormalik said, "and I don't blame you. But isolation has its own price. Your children will grow up in a galaxy that fears them. Your colonies will trade with others but never truly connect with them. You have built walls that may never come down." Helen had no response. She knew he was right. On Earth, President Laura Mitchell met with her cabinet. Senator Greg Palmer looked pleased with the treaty, but others were less satisfied. "The Kralix are planning something," Admiral Linda Shaw said bluntly. "Our intelligence shows increased military production, new weapons development. They're not accepting this peace. They're preparing for round 3. "Then we prepare as well," Laura replied. "What do you need?" "More ships, better sensors, advanced weapons, and I want to expand the defense grid deeper into our territory." Linda pulled up a tactical display. "Right now we can defend our borders. But if the Kralix develop weapons that can bypass our defenses, we need fallback positions," Greg Palmer objected. "More military spending? We just want a war. We should be focusing on rebuilding, on establishing those trade relationships the treaty allows for." "The war isn't over," Linda said flatly. "The fighting has paused." "There's a difference." Laura held up her hand. "Both of you make valid points. Greg, work on the trade agreements. Build those economic ties with the species willing to work with us. Linda, you'll get your expanded defenses. But I want intelligence, not aggression. Watch the Kralix, but don't provoke them. On the frontier colony of Bridger Station, a new generation was growing up. Lieutenant Sam Cooper was 23 years old, born after the New Haven disaster but raised on stories of it. He had joined the Terran Defense Force because protecting humanity was the only career that mattered to him. He stood his watch on the border patrol ship Guardian, the newest vessel in the fleet. Around him, his crewmates were mostly his age or younger. They had never known a galaxy where humanity wasn't isolated, wasn't vigilant, wasn't ready for war. Contact, called out the sensor operator, a young woman named Kate Price, daughter of General Karen Price. One ship, approaching from Kralix space. Sam tensed. IF signature? Kralix diplomatic vessel. They're broadcasting proper authorization codes for transit through the corridor. This was new. The treaty had been in effect for 6 months, but the Kralix had never used it. They had chosen to reroute their trade rather than submit to human inspection. All hands to stations, Sam ordered. Prepare for inspection protocol. The Kralix ship, a small courier named Swift Message, entered the designated transit corridor. It submitted to the sensor scans. It allowed a human inspection team to board and verify its cargo. Everything was by the book, exactly as the treaty specified. The Kralix captain, an older warrior named Tekvor, accepted the inspection with visible distaste but no resistance. As he waited for clearance to proceed, he looked at Lieutenant Cooper with unreadable eyes. "You are young to command a warship," Tekvor observed. "Old enough to do my duty," Sam replied carefully. "Your Admiral Shaw humiliated my people. The memory of that defeat will last for generations." Sam chose his words carefully. "We did not seek conflict. We asked only to be left alone." Tekvor made a sound that might have been laughter. "And in asking to be left alone, you have become the most watched, most feared species in the galaxy." Interesting irony. The inspection completed, Sam cleared the Kralix ship to continue. He watched it disappear into the distance and wondered if Tekvor's words were a threat or simply an observation. Dr. Lisa Bennett, now an elder stateswoman and advisor to President Mitchell, gave a speech at New Terra University. Students gathered to hear the woman who had been there from the beginning, who had helped negotiate humanity's place in the galaxy. "We have achieved security," she told them. "Our borders are safe. Our colonies are protected. We have proven that humanity can defend itself against any threat. But I want you to think about what we have lost." She pulled up images from before the New Haven disaster, humans and aliens working together on scientific projects, cultural exchanges, genuine friendships forming across species barriers. We gave up on galactic integration because the cost was too high. And I don't disagree with that choice. Better alive and isolated than dead and friendly. But you, the next generation, must think about the future. Will we live behind walls forever? Will we never trust again? Or will we find a way to be both secure and connected? A student raised her hand. "Dr. Bennett, do you think the galaxy will ever forgive us for defending our borders?" Lisa smiled sadly. "I think some species already understand. Formalik and others like him see that we were justified. But others, especially the Kralix, will carry their resentment for a long time. The question is whether we can outlast their anger." Captain Ryan Hughes, now a Commodore and commander of an entire patrol group, took his ships on their regular circuit of the border. He stopped at the memorial station that had been built at the site of the first incursion. The station was small, just a platform with a monument. On it were carved the names of everyone who had died in the convoy that first tested the border. Zephany merchants, Kralix warriors, thousands of individuals who had followed orders or pursued profit and paid with their lives. Below their names, a plaque in multiple languages read, "Here lies the price of defiance. Here begins the cost of respect." Humanity asked only for its borders to be honored. The galaxy chose to learn this lesson in blood. May these deaths serve as testament. Never mistake human patience for human weakness. Ryan read the words as he always did when he passed this place. He wondered if they served as a warning or a memorial. Maybe both. His communications officer interrupted his thoughts. "Sir, we're detecting an unauthorized approach. Single ship, civilian configuration, Kralix registry." Ryan felt his stomach tighten. "Distance. 3 hours out. They're heading straight for the boundary. Send the warning," Ryan ordered. "Let's see if they've learned anything." The automated message played out across all frequencies. This time, unlike a year ago, the ship responded immediately. It altered course and retreated without crossing the line. Ryan let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Mark it in the log. One ship approached, received warning, and complied. It was a small thing. One ship following the rules. But maybe it meant something. Maybe it meant the galaxy was finally learning that humanity's borders were real, that the consequences were genuine, that when humans said something, they meant it absolutely. As the patrol continued, Ryan looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Kralliks were planning their next move. Somewhere, other species were deciding whether to work with humanity or against them. Somewhere, the future was being shaped by choices not yet made. Humanity had marked its borders. The galaxy had tested them and failed. Now came the hard part. Living with the peace they had won, maintaining the vigilance they needed, and somehow finding a way to be part of the galactic community without sacrificing the security that cost so much to achieve. The borders remained sealed. The defensive grid remained active, and humanity remained watchful, knowing that the price of survival was eternal vigilance.